So I've been teaching my kids how to say the Our Father prayer. For those of you that don't know how to say the Our Father, there's a line in it that goes, "Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us." My son, one of my younger sons, he has replaced a word, and he says, "Forgive us our trash baggers, as we forgive those who trash bag against us." So to all you trash baggers and waste management servers out there, my boy's got your back. Okay, he's watching out for you. Welcome to Rumble Book Club. I'm your host, Mike Hernandez, and this is the show where a normal guy like me can talk about interesting books I've read, old and new, good and bad. So if you like the show, you like the content, you like the books that I talk about, and you want to help this channel grow, you can subscribe on our Rumble channel on YouTube, and you can also follow us on Twitter, TikTok, and Parler. But more importantly, help this channel grow. Share these videos with your friends and comment also down below. Let me know if there's any books you want me to cover. They could be fact or fiction, whatever they are, whatever you're into. I want to read, I want to experience as well. Today is definitely going to be a more sober episode. We're going to take a look at a book that I just finished reading, and I am glad that I finished it. And I'm glad that I get to share it with you because despite how hard it was to read, I think it was definitely worth it. Today we're going to take a look at Ordinary Men by Christopher R. Browning. The Holocaust was one of the most vicious and callous events of the 20th century, and yet it's still studied today by historians and social psychologists to determine how an entire populace could turn itself on another massive group of its own population. We learn more about this disturbing part of humanity through the lens of Reserve Police Battalion 101 and how their depravity may not be as exclusive to them as many would wish or think. So let's get into our three-part criteria, starting off with the aesthetics, how it looks, how it pops off the shelf, then getting into the readability, how it reads mentally for just a normal person, but also how it physically reads. If the lines are too close together, how's the margins, how's the pages, and finally we'll take a look at the content, what you're actually getting, the information of the story you're getting between the covers. So let's take a look at the aesthetics here. The book was released in 1992, and what I have here is actually a reprint from 2017. There's a plain, fairly relaxed photo of some of the battalion members and a clear title here, so that's pretty solid. The cover, though, with all the information here, with all the added commentary and the quotation here and the afterword, it makes for a very busy cover that I'm not a big fan of. I'm not a fan of the design and the coloring of it. It's, in my opinion, too sensational, and I think it could have done with a more reserved fashion. Nonetheless, I still think it does pop off the shelf. You have a good photo, good title, so I'll still rate it decently at a 6 out of 10. Now let's look at the readability. This is a difficult read for two reasons. The first one being Browning gives you an incredible amount of information about battalions and companies and individual police and their respective whereabouts city to city and country to country. He does this in tandem with dates ranging from the late 30s to the 60s during the trials, which can make internalizing all this data that he's giving you feel pretty overwhelming at times. And the second reason it's fairly difficult to read is it's unbelievably disturbing to read some of the actions of these men and what they were capable of doing on a large scale. Even in today's society where we're very desensitized to a lot of violence due to movies and music and our general culture here, it's something else entirely to read about the people being slaughtered on such an industrial and callous scale by men, women, and children. It's very hard to read. Outside of those two difficulties, those two challenges, Browning is, in the very least in his style, he's very straightforward. He doesn't stretch the dictionary to provide further confusion when you're trying to read it. He is quite direct. The pages themselves, physically how it reads, is very clear. You have off-white pages with clear font and good margins. On the back, there's a pretty extensive photo bank. I don't want to show too much of that, even though This channel isn't exactly for kids. There might be kids watching. It's not worth showing some of the photos in here. But they do provide a pretty clear picture. So as far as the readability, despite the difficulties, it still rates relatively strong with Browning's good writing at a 7 out of 10. All right, guys, let's look at the content. Browning takes us on a tour of the movements of not just the Reserve Police Battalion 101, but of the Nazi movement in Germany in general, and how a combination of factors played a role in the Jewish and the Polish exterminations. We learn a lot about why this group stands out in particular and what they potentially represent. The sheer amount of innocent men, women, and children that they killed directly through immediate violence or indirectly through transporting to concentration camps might cause people to believe that these were particularly hate-filled people steeped in Nazi propaganda, people that were just mass murders and that were very unique in their time. They would be wrong. The prime ages for Nazis and SS stud material of the day were younger generations of the day who had spent their formidable years in Nazi Germany and who had something to prove in their careers. That was the general archetype who you would think would be the prime engine of this Holocaust if you were to think of it on just a surface level. Battalion 101 was made up mostly of the opposite: middle-aged men, family men with pre-existing careers, with a much smaller percentage of them being SS members or affiliating with Nazi politics. Most of them were already set in their ways. They recognized what Germany was long before the Nazi movement took over, and you would think that these would be people that would be most resistant to killing innocent people. During the killings and deportations, we see three groups begin to form within the ranks of the police. We see the 30% or so who volunteered and viciously became accustomed and even in some cases excited by the killing. The 20% or so who actively avoided the killing as much as they individually deemed themselves able to. And the 50% who neither volunteered nor provided any pushback directly against their superiors when given the order to kill. Browning shows how some of them rationalize the killing of men and women and children and we discover some of the expressed motivations for their killings, from following orders to insinuated group pressure to fear of repercussions. What he underscores in this book is that these were not very special monsters as we would like to think. They were regular people, the same amount of inner demons and shadows as any one of us. But they allow themselves to be led into believing that certain human life wasn't sacred and that it was appropriate to eliminate. So this is getting a tiny bit graphic here, but one thing that really stood out to me as a dad was one of the soldiers justified killing a young child during the mass shootings, and he justified it by saying, well, one of my fellow policemen shot his mother, and a kid shouldn't have to go through life without his mother, so I was saving him from life without his mother. And that's what gave him the comfort to pull the trigger. As far as the content goes, it's a solid 10 out of 10. Browning does an excellent job. I found out about this book through Jordan Peterson. It's one of the many books he's read and found insightful as to the psychology of 20th century thinking. You can find this book at pretty much any bookseller if worst comes to worst, and you can't find it at a bookstore. You can go to online means, whether that be Amazon or eBay. The book is Ordinary Men by Christopher R. Browning. It's a tough read, but it's one that should be on everyone's bookshelf. It's something that we have to understand about the human condition. Go out and get yourself a copy. Thanks for watching, everybody, and go read something.